So Russ,
Great to
obviously,
see you.
of a botanical company, Franklin Fields, soon to be a processing company, many other companies, but been participating in this industry in various ways for a while. And part of what we're talking about are like who actually is doing this and who are industry participants, that have different approaches or, more concerned about, their own operation and presence in the commercial market. And we did a on-site broadcast at a botanical company or, Franklin Fields area a while ago, and we owe another one because the sound was really horrible, and we'll be able to come back and do that better. But we talked briefly for a moment though with Russ, and we described about the research, putting together team people who know the various components of things that are necessary to do this properly. I was wondering, Russ, when you see these guys that are looking to focus a lot of time and energy on restricting what caregivers can currently do, does that reflect a group of people that have a great understanding of what's going on in this new commercial world?
Not at all. Two things. The caregiver market's a small market. I was a caregiver for many years, and me transitioning into the commercial market, I absolutely understand it that the caregiver market was always going to be there. That's not what we're focused on. The relationship between grower and patient is very personal. And then the other thing too is I think most of these people were caregivers before they moved into the commercial market. So I really don't understand why they think they're competing with the caregiver market. It's kind of sad.
My question is, why do they lie about it? Why do they say it's got untested products that are dangerous?
If you don't have facts, you have to lie in order to justify your position.
And again, on that same page of language, they include other businesses, the micro business, as something they attack also. So that's a bullshit.
We've used some anachronisms to discuss. We use some anachronisms to describe some industry trade groups here, and I don't want to get two different trade groups confused. Ida, would you please explain the difference between the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association and the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association? Because one of them seems to really support caregivers, and one of them really seems to not.
So the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association supports caregivers, and all of our board members were actually caregivers at one point. So we support caregivers. We support the patients, and caregivers are, customers of our dispensaries.
How many members do you have, Ida?
Over 300.
And how many members does the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association have?
13.
They claim.
So
they
we
claim.
don't know for sure.
And then 300, right? So when we look at who should be driving the engine of discussion regarding industry, it should be the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, not this very small group of well-connected, the Fords and Chrysler of the cannabis industry.
Bam.
Yep. Now, Russ, you're a member of one of those groups too, right?
Yes, the MICIA for many years now. Many years.
And when you talk about the MICIA, that's a company or an organization you think accurately reflects your viewpoint, right?
100%. That's why they have 300 members.
I mean, we work on clemency, patients' rights, expungement issues. I mean, we want to protect the rules, that come out. That's our focus.
And in fact, when legislators have potential rules that they'd like to propose to the legislature, don't they oftentimes come to the MICIA offices to say, hey, can we get your support for this before we actually have it introduced? Because if you don't support this, we don't want to get behind that bill. Isn't that true?
We do take meetings with them, yes.
And you do a lot of consulting with lawmakers, and it's almost as if you are the yin to the MCMA's yang, right?
Maybe.
Russ, I know we've got you just for a short time. I don't want to ignore you, but I wanted to establish a difference between the different trade associations. When you watch this and you see, Russ, companies like Green Peak or Flourish maybe giving the industry a bad name, doesn't it all sometimes feel like they're accidentally giving you a bad name as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've already been lumped in with these groups and had to explain myself that, hey, we have nothing to do with these people. I mean, these people made and they are making bad business decisions. And I think they're in panic mode right now. They don't really know what else to do.
Russ, they took their website offline. What does that tell you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're not transparent, that says a lot about you and your company.
And we talked about 13 members, but a recent news report revealed that only 6 of those 13 are willing to have their names publicly known as members of the MCMA. What does that tell you, Russ Chambers?
It tells me that they're scared. I think that, this boycott is very important. I think the information needs to be out there for the consumers and the caregivers. Listen, if we do have caregiver patients come in and we give them a discount, and they come in because they are in between runs with their caregiver, and we try to give a medical discount and encourage customers to use us when they need us. But the last thing we do is try to get them as a customer and them not use their caregiver. So I mean, I can't even believe we're having this conversation right now.
Well,
we all came from being caregivers, or most of us did. And we knew when we went to the commercial market that the caregiver market was going to be there and it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, but you didn't sell investors on the fact that your master grower, who'd been growing for the last 5 years, knows that his 12 plants produce this much. So now the 1,200 is going to produce this much. So now you sold your investors on those numbers. And now a year later, you've never hit any of those numbers. And your investors are going nuts. That's not you, and that's not people like you.
That's what really drives this.
I think some of these big groups are having a hard time passing microbial testing, and maybe they don't think it's fair that they have to pass whatever it may be. But they should have known that and understood that going into the commercial market. I mean, as my last year as being a caregiver, it was really important for us to adopt the system we're going to use on a larger scale when we win the commercial market, but to make sure we were going to pass microbial testing. And so we did a lot of testing as caregivers. So when we transitioned into the commercial market, that we had an understanding of what this testing was going to be and what it was going to look like.
Ida, your members are not really struggling, are they? Your members are doing pretty good, right?
Our members are doing good, except for, with what's going on in the association, just because, people are getting mixed up. But something that Russ just said, cannabis, I just lost my train of thought.
I did that to you. I'm bad.
Yeah.
Sorry, but you were confirming Russ's sentiments here.
Yeah, I was going to say something about so when we were getting Bella's medicine, I mean, it was being tested for safety issues because she was a pediatric patient. So anyone who has cancer or needs to use this as a medicine, the caregivers are already on themselves testing this medicine. It shouldn't be made, to force them to do anything that they're already doing. So yeah,
I think the majority of the caregivers would pass testing regardless.
And they would, because they're already making the medicine. Yeah. And Rick, what you say, they go out and they research it. And yeah, they care about it. And they want to provide that quality of care.
It's only the greed that gets in the way of that.
The only industry we had in Michigan, regulated industry, was caregivers. And that time after the MMFLA passed, but before the MRTMA kicked in, we had hundreds of distribution centers across the state, or 100 maybe, all supplied by caregiver cannabis and all tested and passed. So the concept that caregiver cannabis is somehow dirty, unclean, can't pass testing, we've already disproven that in our own lifetimes, in our own personal experience the last couple of years. So when the MCMA says things like that or implies things like that, it's already a huge red flag to us because we know that it's not accurate.
Well, and this is an alternative medicine. We should not limit any modality to get to alternative medicine, period.
On the recreational side, the microbial has to be under 100,000 parts per million. And you get up to 50 or 60, you're going to visibly be able to see the mold on the flower. So, as a caregiver, if I gave my patients product that had visible mold on it, they're going to be like, Russ, what's going on here? I don't want this.
Yeah. I mean, when we were hand trimming things, it was very easy for the person who gave a shit, who was actually doing that and got paid to do it, to find that out immediately upon visual inspection. When it's being industrially trimmed through a machine, I don't know if there's that level, and I don't know because I've not been there when that happens, but I just don't know if there's that level of attention being able to be paid. So.
Well, with the remediation that's going on too, I'm kind of disagree with that. I'm not going to mention the store, but we got into a couple different stores, and they said, Russ, do you know how hard it is? Thank God we've got your flower now, because we've had flower in here that was remediated and it has visible mold on it. And to explain to a consumer or a patient, oh yeah, you can see the mold, don't worry, it's been remediated. I mean, come on, it's a joke.
Yeah. Well, that's a quality control issue. I mean, the reality is that no company should be putting a visibly moldy product out, remediated or not. And nobody that did not come from the black market. That would have never.
No, happened. That's the commercial market.
Correct.
Yeah, black market never would have tolerated that.
We wouldn't have tolerated that. I mean, we offer refunds in the black market.
Now, we have just a ton of experience here in this call with both regulated and unregulated retail situations. Jamie Lowell with Third Coast, I of course have years with Big Daddies. Russ is with Boco. Jim Salame, though, Ohm of Medicine. I mean, Jim, you ran a wonderful location in Ann Arbor at Ohm. It was the top in the state. It was the coolest vibe. It was some of the best cannabis. No Can you imagine ever in your time selling something that you had visible mold on it and then trying to explain it away by saying, well, it's dead. So
we tested, we tested more when people weren't testing, especially for patients that really needed it, that had compromised immune systems. And we gave away RSO. I mean, we had caregivers that gave away RSO for our patients that were in need, to the point that, maybe they were dealing with cancer, or maybe they had other issues that it provided. So we try to provide that. It's, I don't know. It's the way someone used a word earlier about tailoring things, and the tailor-made options that we could provide for people were above anything else you can find in a dispensary today. And it's even getting less diverse as far as selection is concerned. I'm glad that CBD is finally starting to come out, and you're seeing more CBD products in the dispensaries. But there are other things. There are suppositories. I mean, there are other types of ratios and tinctures out there that can be made, because the ratios are really important. I mean, we were getting into that as far as 2-to-1s and 1-to-1s and how different it is, and if you added CBNs in there, and there's so many things that you can try in the realm for individual patient care. When it comes to being a caregiver, which is what we're talking about.
Now, Russ, when you first opened Boco, you had a certain selection of products available to you now. You're a couple years in. How's that selection improved? And have you noticed certain brands that really stand out as somebody that you're always proud to carry?
Yes, I do. So even though that we have our grow up and running, we still use Tom Bella at Real Leaf Solutions and Drew Driver at Driven Grow. They consistently have great product coming out, and it's consistent.
Right. And as far as product selection goes now, I mean, so much different now than when you first started, correct?
It's overwhelming right now. I'd have to look into what edible lines and vape lines that we are currently using right now. It's been a minute since I've been part of the purchasing department.
No, but the thought is that there's a lot more options available to you now than there were previously.
Oh, by far. And so when we first opened Tawas, the commercial market per pound or edible, whatever, was $35,000 to $4,000 a pound. And we made a conscious decision that we weren't going to pass a majority of that cost onto our consumer. So for the first 6-8 months, we stayed the black, but barely. So now there's a lot of options out there, quality and inexpensive stuff, and we are still, just this year getting our profit margins up. But for the first year, I didn't really want to sell somebody a $20 gram, flower.
Yeah. Well, what we're seeing with the product availability, though, is that in California and some Western states, there's something called shelf premiums that are being charged. They have a lot of different names, but essentially, when the competition becomes so great that people are competing to get on your shelves, other retailers in other states have decided to charge rent on that particular shelf space to that manufacturer. I mean, it's a pretty odious practice. I can't even imagine why people would want to continue to work with you if you're double dipping them like that. But Russ, can you see some places in Michigan maybe going to something like that to help them pare down the offerings they have available?
I mean, I could see the big players that have 10 plus stores doing something like that. My motto in business is I like to do business with people I like and friends. So that's something that I wouldn't be interested in doing.
You just opened a new location, didn't you, at Boco?
Well, we got the Lansing store opened last November, and we're weeks away from opening our Kalkaska store. And then after that store gets open, probably a month to 5 weeks behind that for our social use lounge that'll be connected to that store. So we got some really exciting things coming up.
But that'll be this summer, though. I mean, you're talking about 5 weeks. That's not that far away.
No. And our labs, we're hoping to get our lab open by July. We got some pretty cool products, infused beverages and affordable gummies, cartridges, and even edibles for sleep. That's what I use a lot of the edibles for, sleeping, but I hate eating a gummy covered in sugar right before I go to bed. So we're do some vegan stuff too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's, again, you're seeing some products that are going to take advantage of some niche markets. When all the main product lines are satisfied and are starting to get fat, that's when niche markets start to work out, whether it's, diabetic, whether it's vegan, no gluten. There are all different types of things. One of the things that we're hampered by in Michigan is having a requirement for shelf-stable edibles. And that basically means that you can't have anything that requires refrigeration. But there's a lot of product lines that would be available if refrigeration or freezers were available. Russ, if that were to change, if those product lines were to become available, would you happily snap those things up and sell them to your customers?
No, absolutely. I would love to do some sort of frozen slushy or popsicle stick,
Ice cream.
Especially in the summer months, ice cream. Good food. I mean, infused food. My brother's a chef, so I think we could come up with some pretty creative stuff.
Yeah. Hey, so Russ, I know that you only had like a little bit of time with us, and you've been on for a while, and I really appreciate it. You mentioned Tom Beller. I did talk to him earlier and asked him to come on. He couldn't make it today, but he echoed a lot of the stuff that you said, and he also said his caregiver mentality has stuck with him through scaling up into the commercial system, and he really views it as trying to get good medicine out to people through this system now instead of through the one that he used to work in, and it certainly in no way would support doing anything to hurt the caregiver system.
No, and affordable. We don't. Tom and Drew, they never gouge when they could have gouged stores. They wanted to build long-term relationships.
Hey, you brought up East Talis, right? That was very crucial for us earlier. Yeah.
There's some points that we were paying $3,500 a pound, and I told those people, fine, I'm going to do this so I have supply, but we'll never have a long-term relationship.
As a retail manager for many years, I can tell you long-term relationships are important, not just with your corporate partners, but also with your purchasing partners, and establishing a one-on-one dialogue between the person at the counter and the consumer coming in is crucial. Are you really working hard to retain staff and make sure that the best people are forward-facing in your organization, Russ?
Yes, we are. It can be difficult sometimes. I mean, we have 80 employees right now, but just training them, educating them. And my phone's always available too, because if there is a hiccup with a relationship, that person picks the phone up and calls me.
Yeah.
Hey, Russ, I want to read the position of the MICIA from Executive Director Robin Schneider, and then we'll give you any last words you'd like to leave us with, and we'll continue this conversation. And really appreciate you coming on to help us demonstrate, that there are different points of view in the industry itself, and that there's a specific problem here that we're talking about. So the statement from the executive director, Robert Schneider of the MICIA, our members know firsthand that our industry was built on the backs of caregivers and that patients deserve options, including homegrown. It is for this reason that our board of directors unanimously passed a resolution stating that the MICIA will not support any legislative effort that is harmful to patients or their caregivers. And I think a lot of people agreed with that. In fact, I saw that passed around from the article as the lead on top in a lot of social media postings. So
I couldn't say it any better. I mean, geez, I was a caregiver. I loved being a caregiver. I loved helping patients. They just moved over into the commercial market,
And if they allowed you, you'd probably still be a caregiver.
No, absolutely.
And that's something I find interesting, that these people were all forced to give up their caregiver licenses, but had they not been, they probably still would all be caregivers.
All part of the same ultimate strategy that we've been talking about. Those things got in for that reason.
Yeah, Rick was talking about that there was a decline in caregivers in Michigan, and it was mostly because there was myself and two other people that are my head growers right now, and we were all caregivers together, and we had to give up our caregiver's license to enter the commercial market.
You probably know more former caregivers than current caregivers.
I'd say about 50-50 now.
Okay.
But that's a fair assumption, though, Adam. Actually, and I'm a former caregiver. I was a caregiver for 3 years, registered with the state, and I know Jamie was too, and Deb currently is. So we're all, when we're talking about this is a life we lead. This is a path we walk. It's not some hypothetical we're discussing. These are real world things that actually affect the way that we operate and interact with our particular fellows. I know we've got Daryl Stavros here too. Russ, do you have a few more minutes to hang out, or do you need to run?
I've got a couple more minutes.
Awesome. Okay, good. Yep.
Now, you know Daryl, don't you?
Yes.
For sure. How's it going?
Good. How are you? It's been a while.
Good to see you.